All right, in the interest of time, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. And uh, we'll also be on the lookout for folks trying to enter the meeting who might need any troubleshooting help. But I'm really excited that we get to segue into some more interactive discussions for the remainder of the meeting, starting off with uh, this case study presentation about the Solar Cares project. Um, Around how to center minority serving institutions in partnerships around clean energy. So I'm really thrilled to have a great panel. We'll hear from the speakers first, but feel free to drop questions into the chat. Feel free to turn on your camera and contribute to the discussion as we go along. We'll have Star Hodge, who's the State Energy Program Manager with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Henry, who you all might have seen in the previous session with the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Community Development Action Coalition, and one of NASIO's partners on our Workforce Diversity Research Project. And finally, Dr. Greg Monty, Director with the Center for Energy Research and Technology at North Carolina A&T. So thank you all for being here. As we go through the dialogue, I wanted to throw out a question for everybody to consider. And this is sort of formulated with state energy offices and minority serving institutions attendees in mind. But of course, if you're coming from a different perspective, we'd love to hear it. Namely, what are the successes and challenges that you've had in engaging minority serving institutions or in trying to cultivate trusted partnerships between policymakers and minority serving institutions and underrepresented communities? So we'd really love to hear your thoughts, not only on that question, but any other insights that the course of the conversation with Star, Dr. Monty and Henry inspires. And then finally, just some quick tips for using Zoom meeting. If you are comfortable, please turn on your camera, microphone, engage in the discussion. Sadly, we can't be in person, but we would like to create as interactive a platform as possible. If you'd like to share any resources or insights with the full audience, feel free to use the chat feature. If you need any technical help, you can contact me over chat. You can also email my colleague Shamika Spencer, sspencer@nasio.org. So with that, I'll turn it over to Henry to kick us off. Henry, I will share your slides as well. Oops, apologies. And I'll get that set up as you get us started.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and thank you for the partnership, and thank you for joining us today. As has been said, I'm Henry Gollat. I am with the Community Development Action Coalition. I head up their policy, not policy, but strategy work in that regard. A little bit of level setting around the coalition. I know you've heard this if you've been participating in some of our other sessions, but I think it's needful for us to do that same level setting here with us today. CDAC was founded in 2010 as an outcome of programs and initiatives which were originally funded by the U.S. Departments of Housing and Urban Development and the Department of Agriculture under the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Office of University Partnerships and the 1890 land grant programs, respectively. We are a member-serving intermediary for nonprofit with a national scope and mandate. One of our strategic frameworks of our initiatives in this regard is the Clean Energy Initiative. We've got 4 strategic initiatives that we seek to implement nationally in partnership with HBCUs. This one is the Clean Energy Initiative. The mission of the Clean Energy Initiative is to increase awareness, equitable access to clean energy solutions by directly engaging HBCU research academies and scholars, as well as their surrounding host communities as test beds for deployment. We seek community partnerships and relationships because, as you just heard in the previous session with Dr. Tolson, Ivor Tolson, we have to be intentional about engaging our community. And that's what this project is all about, how we take the academic institution, marry it with entities like CDAC and others to the benefit of the surrounding communities. CDEC and our partners in this work not only seek those kinds of outcomes, we really want to bring those benefits directly into LMI communities and empower those communities to do the work that needs to be done in their communities, creating opportunities in innovation, enterprise development, and the like, with that HBCU as a partner, not just as a recipient, but as a partner. The idea is to empower the academic institutions. Of course, in this session, we want to talk about how we've done that. We want to unpack a little bit about how our model is set up. We got an engagement model, and then we got a framework that we work from, but it really seeks to operationalize the work that we talked about just now, how we engage our HBCU partners as stakeholders and the MSI community, as well as core partners in equitable community development agendas. Next slide. If you participated in our session yesterday, you heard one of our key stakeholders, Congressman John Sylvain, talk about how we're not doing anything if we're not maximizing this opportunity for all communities. And that is at the heart of what this diversity project with NASCIO has sought to do. We really wanted to drill deep, engage the HBCUs, engage their communities as thought leaders in this space. We think that the way the Congressman has summed this up directly speak to our value proposition in this regard. We want to create mutually beneficial deal flows to seek to favorably position its partners and stakeholders to increase diversity and inclusive outcomes by directly involving our HBCUs in their communities. So in that regard, we've put together a framework that we tend to think about in how we do this work. And so this engagement model here speaks directly to how we seek to engage all levels of the campus. Certainly starting with chancellors and presidents, we have to have buy-in. It needs to be at the highest level possible. Sometimes we have to start in the middle and work our way up, as you'll kind of hear in this case here. But basically, we want to ideally look at how do we bring the whole campus into this equation. And I should say this work was prefaced initially by doing some listening sessions, some roundtables and things like that to kickstart the work. The model seeks in its very elementary form to do three things. It has to be interdisciplinary. It has to be capable of being institutionalized. That's very important to us. And then it has to be community centric. We are the Community Development Action Coalition. And so much of our work takes place in regards to how we engage the community. Next slide. And in that same vein, we've created this campus and community implementation framework. You see it displayed here, but basically, again, the four tenets of that work would be, how do we demonstrate scalability, replicability of this work? And again, this case study we'll talk about and drill down on how that looks and functions and flows. But it also needs to be supported by a research agenda that the campus itself is moving toward. And we understand that HBCUs, MSIs in some cases, are developing that research agenda with some level of intentionality, and we want to assist them in that regard. But this work has to be grounded in research and a research agenda. And then at the last point here, drives inclusive innovation and economic development. It's not enough to do the research. It has to move us toward actual implementation into the community, and it needs to be focused on an economic development outcome. That is where we seek to create workforce development opportunities, job creation, as well as career development opportunities based upon data, research, and engagement. So a little bit of background of how we arrived at this work with North Carolina A&T. As part of our listening sessions and work that we were standing up around the Clean Energy Initiative, in particular the DOE project, the Workforce Diversity Project with Sandy and her team, we had a number of listening sessions and office hours that we conducted with everyone who was interested, I should say, from the HBCU and MSI community. One of those was Dr. Monty. Dr. Monty and his team came on board and had some real pointed questions of CDAC and the work that we were doing. And you know, it led to some fruitful conversations. It led to us exploring ways that we could work together, and we landed on this Solar Cares project. And so today we're happy to share that with you and talk a little bit about what that actually means and entails for not only for North Carolina A&T and the host communities of Greenville, North Carolina, but also for your institution and how it can be replicated, and how CDAC and NASIO and others of our partners stand ready to help make that happen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Monty.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah, I wanted to start off by just talking about the foundational work that takes place. We've been working with the State Energy Office in North Carolina for many, many years. And most recently, we were a member of a big group of people that developed the state energy plan that was rolled out by Governor Cooper in late 2019. I think it was October was the announcement. So that was sort of foundational work. We've been working with them. We're one of the 3 state-funded energy centers at a university in North Carolina. There's one in App State University in Boone, North Carolina A&T in Greensboro, and then NCSU down in Raleigh. And we have 3 energy centers that work very closely with the State Energy Office. So we were fortunate through the foundational work to be included in a grant proposal to the DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, who funded the State Energy Office and approximately 14 projects. I think we have 3 of them in our center. And those were projects that were devoted to studying how to improve manufactured homes, or LMI, low to moderate income home structures, and what's the most efficient way to reduce the energy usage in a home. What kind of energy efficiency projects can we do? Second project is a relatively large, what I call an audit and upgrade and then monitor project. We're identifying up to 20 homes in the Greensboro area, mostly in East Greensboro, directly near the NCA&T campus, for energy upgrades. And so we're working with a community housing development organization called CHS, Community Housing Solutions. And then they have a contractor company that works with them to make the improvements on homes. So we're going out, we're auditing homes. We're looking to see what kind of energy efficiency upgrades we can do for these people that live in low to moderate income homes. And we're taking the grant money supplied through the State Energy Office and DHHS to implement that project. And it's an interesting project because Community Housing Solutions, being a CHODO or a community housing development organization, they start with work on these homes before we even engage with them. And then we bring additional monies through the DHHS grant to upgrade those homes, make them energy efficient, make additional contributions to the structures that these people are living in. And then we were able to bring additionally the CDAC and Clean Energy Initiative into this, because they had relationships with the solar energy providers. And so now, after we've done some weatherization or identified these homes and done some upgrades, first by CHS, then by our organization and our grant money, then we can come in and put solar panels on the roofs of these homes. So we make a significant impact on the homeowners and their economic situation. They get educated, they learn about this. Our community is going to learn about this because we're going to have regular outreach events to explain what we're doing in the community. NCA&T is a very community-based university. It has strong relationships with its surrounding community. The East Greensboro area is an area that needs additional development, and this is focused in that specific area. So that's what the project is. And then the third project we have is a clean energy apprenticeship programs. We're running a pilot program this summer where we're bringing in students, community college and high school level students that want to do internships and apprenticeship jobs. And we're running a couple of pilots together. One is in the solar area over in Halifax County, working directly with solar panel, solar farm installers and companies. So we have a bunch of students there, and we're working with specific industrial organizations that are doing HVAC work or building energy management work in both Wake County and in Greensboro, Guilford County. And we're developing this program as a pilot, which we expect to expand because we have nearly 100,000 clean energy jobs in the state of North Carolina. So there are quite a few jobs, and we need to have a very, very strong workforce to fill that pipeline. So all those projects are going on to sort of simultaneously this year. And, you know, the relationships are key there. We had to know the Community Housing Development Organization, which has been working in Greensboro for over a decade. We had to know the State Energy Office folks. We had to have a relationship with our chancellor, who's interested in making sure that we're doing community outreach and is a strong supporter of my Center for Energy Research and Technology. So those things were key. And I guess I'll stop there. And well, one more point. We're working with the governor's office on this project. They're very strong supporters of this. We're working with the community college system of North Carolina because the apprenticeship program is going to flow through the community college organization. And we're working with Apprenticeship North Carolina, which is the organization that sets up official apprenticeship programs with the Department of Labor. So I'm sure I left some of the smaller players out, but it's a big project and it has a lot of relationships that have to be there to make it work. So
Dr. Monty, you brought up a good point there, that it takes relationships, and CDAC realizes that in our work as well. That's why these kinds of partnerships, and for those who are looking to learn from this example and emulate it, it's all about networking and partnerships and bringing people together, coalition building. To that end, we're supported by, I did not hear the philanthropic community, although I know you have those in your corner as well. We are supported as an organization, and in this particular work, the CEI work is supported by funders like JPB Foundation and others. DOE, of course, is we have a standing memorandum of agreement, really a landmark at the time, might even still be one, but a landmark memorandum of agreement with the Department of Energy that saw value in CDAC and how CDAC was approaching its work, both in regards to DOE and the JPB Foundation, to help us spread this model, this implementation, this framework, this intentionality around engaging HBCUs, not as beneficiaries alone. That's part of it, building the capacity of those institutions to be thought leaders in the research sphere, but also they are already involved. 1890 institutions, as my former university, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, where I spent about 25 years doing this kind of work, Tennessee State and others, they are already 1890 land-grant institutions. So they have a mission to solve problems, and environmental problems are problems no less, oftentimes even more so. So yeah, partnerships and relationships are key and core to how we do our business model.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Dr. Monty covered a lot of what I wanted to say. And I'm really glad he brought in the part about the partnership with the governor's office. We're so fortunate here in the state of North Carolina that we have a lot of policy guidance that's come out over the last few years. Like Dr. Monty mentioned, we have the North Carolina Clean Energy Plan, which was developed because Governor Cooper came out with Executive Order 80 in 2018 and charged the Department of Environmental Quality with developing this plan. We have the North Carolina Energy Efficiency Roadmap, and we also have the North Carolina Energy Policy Council biennial report. And like Dr. Monty mentioned, all of these guidance documents in North Carolina, they charged us and came up with recommendations for us to develop the energy efficiency apprenticeship program, which also incorporates clean energy. It also incorporates looking at equity when it comes to job markets in clean energy and the energy sector. But like Dr. Monty said, and we are so fortunate here in North Carolina, we've been partnering with North Carolina A&T State University, which is one of the best HBCUs in the nation, not just because my kids graduated from there, but because they've done such great work in the state of North Carolina with energy efficiency buildings in the low to moderate communities, moderate income communities. They've also done annually like energy efficiency summer training sessions for disadvantaged youth throughout Greensboro and throughout the state of North Carolina, and now working with us on this workforce development initiative. It's just such a great partnership that we have with this university. And like Dr. Monty mentioned, since I've been with the Energy Office the last 22 years, we've funded the energy centers throughout the state, and that always included North Carolina A&T and the two other universities that they mentioned. And so fortunate, like he said, we were able to get $4 million in CARES Act funds, and we didn't have to reach far, to look at partners, because we have such strong partnerships with great entities and relationships, not just with the universities, but like you said, with the governor's office, with the community college levels, with private businesses and other agencies across the state. So I think this is an awesome project, and it helps us to look at implementing a lot of the recommendations and a lot of those policy guidance that have recently come out in the state of North Carolina. And fortunate that we could connect with your group, Henry, and we're so fortunate for all the support that we received from NASIO and DOE and others. So we're looking forward to the rest of this session.
Thank you all so much for those comments. We did have a question come through the chat from Sharon Brown. Sharon, I know you had some perspectives that you wanted to share, so I wanted to create space for that. I also had a question about sort of the state university relationship, but I'll leave that for later. Sharon, if you're ready, please go ahead. Did we lose Sharon? You might need to unmute if you're trying to speak.
I'm here.
Oh, great.
Well, my name's Sharon Brown. I'm going to make this really quick. I'm sorry I don't know how to put the video on, but I have my t-shirt on from my college, which is University of Baltimore, which is not a HBCU, but the reason why I am here is because my parents met at Morgan State University, so I'm part of the family. But what I want to bring to the table is this. I've been in the energy efficiency and renewable energy field for 40 years of my life. I helped write the Energy Policy Act. I see my good friend Carol Warner is here on the call too. And I've been trying all of my career to give back to the communities. And I've approached a lot of the colleges through an American Recovery and Reinvestment Act under President Obama. I would like to join your clean energy initiative in any capacity and bring lessons learned. I'm sorry about telemarketers calling me from home, but I have done every single thing in the solar industry, even installing panels, been one of the initiative people with ACOR, the whole 9 yards. I know the barriers, I know the financing that's available, I know the community capacity, I eat and sleep and drink solar. So I'll make sure Sandy has my information. I look forward to joining you in any capacity. And I hope, wish you all the success. And really and truly, I don't need an auto home warranty. I don't know why people are calling me, but look for me. I am a resource and I'm here to help you.
Sharon and Sandy, real quick. Sharon, we did talk, I think, and certainly appreciate your insightfulness and look forward to connecting and convening with you around how we might work together on some of this.
It'd be my pleasure.
And since you mentioned the fact that your parents met at Morgan State, this work from CDAC's perspective, models and emulates work that was done at Morgan State in their community mile. The whole model is built upon that notion that Morgan State, Dr. Wilson and his team there implemented in partnership. They are in partnership actually with the Obama administration. And so again, this model it started there. We're taking it nationally, North Carolina A&T, and then we're looking also. I know Carol Davis, who is on CDAC's board and it resides in Winston-Salem. There, we're looking at where else we might be able to replicate this, particularly getting some level of economies of scale by doing it in neighborhoods like Greensboro and now Winston-Salem and Charlotte at some point. But since there is a cluster of HBCUs, very prominent HBCUs, I might add, in North Carolina.
And then we reach out to Mississippi, Georgia, all across the UN. But North Carolina A&T, our EPA administrator is a product of that, and his partnership with working with Department of Energy programs. So it's not so much engineers. I'm a history major. So you have policy, there's countless jobs. I've always been able to secure a position, and I've been very glad to do so. So sorry about my hair, but nice to meet you all. Please reach out. Please, look, I even have the Energy Policy Act of 1992 to help write. So I'm legitimate. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Excellent.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
Oh, thank you. Now, this is Gary with Maryland Energy Administration, and this is a very exciting conversation we're having here. But my question for the three of you, or the two of you, is that, and I know solar is very important, and I'm a very good component of solar, and I hear that a lot when it comes to equity, and it always the focus is always solar. And then what I want to talk about, maybe you all can talk about, there's other renewable energies out there besides solar, because my background is biomass and aerobic digester and things of that nature. And I'm not too far from Morgan State. And then of course, solar is a primary conversation, but we need to kind of like open the spectrum for different sector of the energy sector besides just solar. And I understand, because I love solar, it's the new shiny toy that we all want to talk about. But we're also missing out some great opportunities for our young generation to go in the energy sector besides solar. You have CHP, combined heat and power, resilience energy, small microgrids, things of that nature. So maybe we can, in the future, or maybe now, we can talk about the other side of the energy besides renewable solar as well. So this is my take, and one of you can address that if you would like.
So let me just start off, and then I'll certainly pass it over to Dr. Monty to add some color to that as well. We are the Clean Energy Initiative, meaning as much that, we're starting with solar. That's not the end all be all. I know, for instance, again, I talk about the HBCUs, or the 1890s for that matter, with vast resources as it relates to land mass and things of that nature. I know for the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, we're doing switchgrass research, and I know Alcorn and some of the others are doing the same in partnership with the Corps of Engineers. So it's not lost upon us the nature of biomass and cellulosic material as an energy source. It's just that we're starting with solar because it's so available and it's available everywhere, whereas biomass or wind energy or, some of the other nuclear energy, some of the other energies that we think about might not be as readily available. And so with that, I'll yield to Dr. Monty. You might have some additional comments. You have a center that's focused on renewable energy.
Right, and in our center, we have many activities on our campus. We're fortunate to have a group that does a lot of biomass. They have $1 million a year biomass program where they're converting biomass into fuel. Of course, we have a big wind farm in the eastern part of North Carolina that's functioning, the Amazon wind farm out there in Elizabeth City. And we have projects going on for turbines in the ocean and doing offshore wind projects in North Carolina. So yeah, we cover many of these different areas. I've worked a lot on carbon emissions from the 700 plus energy generation sources in North Carolina, and I've done modeling on that kind of thing. So our centers are broad, they have lots of opportunity. but this project is focused on solar. Solar is one of the cheapest. Wind and solar are the two cheapest ways to produce energy in the United States today. We're measured in like 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's very cheap to make this kind of energy in the United States. And then lastly, I would point out that, our university, because we have all these other research projects going on our campus, we have lots of professors who are focused on building energy management and energy efficiency and HVAC systems, heating and ventilation, air conditioning systems, and how to make those more efficient. We have drones that we use to look at the outsides of buildings to see how much energy is escaping from the building leaks or windows or whatever. And then I have a very large grant that just got started in late last year in 2020 in October from the Department of Energy. And it's not just focused on HBCUs or African-American communities. It's an MSI kind of project. It's probably going to end up being $5 million over 5 years. Right now it's 3 million, but we expect it to get additional funding. So it's $1 million a year, and we're working with the national labs in Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, Sandia, and Lawrence Livermore, as well as NREL itself. And those relationships are helping us to build a workforce that goes into those national labs and to industries that are associated with the national labs doing energy research work. So all of those entities exist, and we keep building those relationships, and we're funneling hundreds of students per year into the national labs for summer internships that help them get jobs in the energy workforce. So it's broad.
Thank you both gentlemen for answering my question. I appreciate it.
You bet.
And just to add to Gary's question around biomass,
Natasha, thank you.
I'm sorry. No, just to add very quickly to your question, biomass as one of the many clean energy technologies, our institution at Fort Valley State in Georgia, they do a lot of research and work around how to utilize, like Henry said, the resources from land and real estate to advance biomass technology as not only a benefit to the institutions, but really to the communities. When you think about wind energy, I think we have 4 institutions in Texas that are really trying to be a player in that space. And I think part of the partnership with an organization like NASCIO is how to, one, lift up that work for our institutions, and also how to really support researchers who've been toiling at this for a long time, but because of whatever the barriers or the challenges are, they've not been able to lift up their work in a way that really it deserves and that can be most impactful. The other piece, I think you mentioned combined heat and power, is really how do we work with our institutions to connect energy efficiency, starting with campuses, right? CDAC tries to focus on campuses and communities. There's so much utility that's used and energy that's used on campus, but we don't invest in and really take advantage of the resources that are available. The Department of Energy have tons of technical support and assistance that can be utilized by HBCUs to really assess their own utility costs, assess their approach to the technology, the equipment that they utilize for heating and air conditioning. And I think for us, we want to start there and really amplify that, and then really take that to the community and ultimately bring that to the communities for job training and ultimately for jobs. So would love to continue talking with you, Gary, and to Ms. Brown. Our work for the HBCU Clean Energy Initiative started at Morgan State. We're working with homeowners association, nonprofit organization, and the mayor's office, former Mayor Rollins Blake. We were able to support 33 families to receive solar technology. we will continue to focus more this summer in doing phase 2 of that work, building on our partnership with the NAACP and Grid Alternatives and the Maryland solar energy industry. And I would absolutely love to have both of you work with us. We meet every Friday, and look out for an invitation for our next planning conversation next Friday.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Appreciate your response on that.
Sandy, while we wait on other questions, if there may be any, it looked like we might have one from Gary.
Yep, Gary just posed his question, but Gary, was there anything else that you wanted to chime in on?
No, I typed my question and I quickly answered, but no, I think all three of you have done a wonderful job answering the question. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I look forward to working with you as well, Ms. Campbell.
My question, I love this session because it highlights how a minority serving institution and a state energy office can work together with support from an organization like CDAC and a wide array of partners. And it strikes me that in other states, similar partnerships and dialogues can form, and even simply just cultivating that partnership can help inform the state energy office's understanding of their workforce pipeline, their STEM pipeline. And then on the flip side, minority serving institutions can have some more insight into the state policymaking process, future planned investments in clean energy, and maybe devise ways to lean in with their programming and training opportunities. So Dr. Monty and Star, I would love to hear about sort of how the relationship has formed, and if you have advice for other states that might be trying to develop more robust partnerships with their minority serving institutions.
If it's okay with Dr. Monty, I'll start out. I've been with the State Energy Office for over 23 years now. And one of the very first partners that I met when I started with the State Energy Office was North Carolina A&T State University. So we have, over the years, since I've been with the State Energy Office, we wanted to make sure that we had close ties with NCA&T because, like we're mentioning in this whole session, it is an HBCU. We also have partnerships with other institutions too, but they were doing so much work in the Greensboro area with the minority communities and the low to moderate income communities, even in the late 1990s when I started working with the office. And so we've always kept that close relationship with them, whether we had additional funding that come through our office. We always wanted to make sure that we reached out to North Carolina A&T. And they also have a really great engineering and environmental programs through North Carolina A&T State University. As Ms. Brown mentioned, the EPA administrator, Michael Regan, he's a graduate of North Carolina A&T State University, and he was the secretary for the department that I'm currently in now. So we were fortunate enough to work under him for the last 4 years. But even before, Secretary Regan, as he was then, came to the Department of Environmental Qualities, we've always valued the input that we got from North Carolina A&T. And with that partnership, we were always able to keep diversity in getting more students into the energy sector. Like I said, I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the relationship with us, annually, North Carolina A&T does like a summer energy efficiency training program for disadvantaged youth. So that's exposing more minorities and disadvantaged youth to energy and STEM programs and just engineering programs too, all as a whole. And they've done a lot with energy efficiency buildings over the years and in those communities that surround them. And like I mentioned, my students went to my children, not my students, graduated from North Carolina A&T State University. And I just saw firsthand, the value from working with them and from my personal life, what they can do just to help disadvantaged low to moderate income communities as a whole. And like Dr. Monty mentioned, the State Energy Office has always tried to have initiatives and funding opportunities that we work with them on. And they are one of the 3 university energy centers that we fund annually through state appropriations in the state because of all the great work that they do there. And they bring so many partners to this relationship that we have that we didn't even know about. Like I just learned about this coalition through the work that we've done with NCANT. So that's great too. And like he said, we bring in the governor's office, public and private entities all into this partnership. But it's just been great over the years working with NCANT. And now, especially with this workforce development initiative program that we have, Dr. Monty mentioned Halifax County. That's a tier 1 county in the state of North Carolina, and tier 1 means it's one of the most disadvantaged counties in the state. It's a lot of rural area there. A lot of the population is from the low income sector. So we're fortunate enough to do this initiative there where we're providing energy education and on-the-job training for those youth in that county, and so that we can help them to get more and bring more diversity into the energy sector, but also to help them to give back to their communities too in the future, and help that county to do better. So I don't know if Dr. Monty has something he'd like to add on. I think I see there's a question from Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. One of the things, this partnership with CDAC and NASA is intended to really build capacity, CDAC being a relatively new institution, and everybody loves North Carolina A&T. You guys are a star, and that's coming from a Howard and a Florida A&M graduate. So we recognize the competition is stiff, but we also have on the call Karen Soares, who's with Barber Scotia. And as you know, that's a small institution, private in North Carolina. And it would be great to hear, to the extent you can share, Star, how can an institution like Barber Scotia be part of this effort that, that's well established with North Carolina A&T?
I think, just us having this type of setting so that we can make connections with each other. One of the things I heard I was in a conference this week with Kelly Speaks Bachman, who is the new acting assistant secretary for EERE in the Department of Energy. And she talked about how we could get more diversity and minority participation in some of the energy sector work that we're doing. And part of it is just the networking, getting connections with each other. So this I think is really great that we're participating in this session, and hopefully I can get her contact information and she can get mine, and we can start, a more in-depth dialogue after the session.
Yeah, I would echo that, because I think relationships are key, collaboration is key. So for me to get to the point where I could have a working relationship with the State Energy Office, it required me to go to the Energy Policy Committee meetings and have my face seen in Raleigh. I got involved with the 100+ people that developed the state energy plan that Governor Cooper pushed and Sushma Maesmore, drove to completion. And then, we just have regular meetings and we see people across the state all the time. So anyone who wants to collaborate with the State Energy Office, I'm sure their arms are open and they'd love to, get people engaged. So I think that's what it takes. It's just going and showing up.
Sandy, one last thing before we move too far forward is we didn't talk about we talk about the benefits, cost saving utility benefits to homeowners. We talk about the benefit of the research and what have you. There's a equally important notion here around innovation and entrepreneurship and how that fits in. That's something that I think CDAC is really very interested in, as it empowers a different group of people in a different type of way. It's all right to do things for people. It's all right to engage people, but we want to do things with them and not necessarily always for them. And so entrepreneurship and innovation allows for us to think about this in a totally different way. And so we're also, although we have not lifted up that example as much as yet, that's something we're aggressively moving toward. We're thinking about innovation in this space. We're thinking about how we engage our young Black and Brown individuals who would want to be entrepreneurs and have interest in being involved beyond just installers and the technical side of that, but more importantly, throughout the value chain of this work. I developed and operated an incubator for a number of years. Still do that work now. It's very dear to my heart because entrepreneurship create economic empowerment and wealth generation in a way that working for someone never will be able to do. And so we want to not lose that as part of what the paradigm and the mandate is around this work. That can be from a manufacturing concern, where we're building technology that allows for portable storage devices that based upon energy and solar and what have you, all the way down to just, like I said, the installation and the weatherization and other components of the general contractor type labor that we normally would think about. So I don't want it to be lost on us that we're only thinking one or two dimensionally. We're thinking fully rounded around how we have to empower our communities. And A&T has wonderful programs. I know they got a Center for Entrepreneurship and some other things there that we want to be able to tap. And this model allows us to tap into not only in A&T, but throughout the HBCU community and environment.
Thank you, Henry. Those are excellent points. And I feel like it tees up actually the next two conversations really well, which I hope folks will stick around for. The next one will highlight some examples of really workforce training and development programs that create that pipeline in the near term. And then the final conversation of the day from 3 to 3:45 is around the STEM and technology innovation ecosystem. How do we diversify? How do we make it inclusive? And we're really thrilled to have a great panel, including Dr. Vanessa Chan with the Office of Technology Transitions at DOE, Dr. Sumesh Arora with the Mississippi Development Authority, and Dr. J. Chris Ford at Florida International. So I really hope folks will stick around. We have eaten up a little bit of our intended break from 2 to 2:15 Eastern time today, but we did want to give folks a chance to sort of process your thoughts and respond to emails for a few minutes if you need to. So Henry Starr and Dr. Monty, thank you so much for your comments. This has been a really interesting discussion. I took a ton of notes, and I think that there's a lot of really good insights that other states and minority serving institutions should be considering that we can try to lift up in future conversations and publications. So with that, we'll plan to reconvene in about 5 minutes at 2:15 with our next panel on collaborations to facilitate entry into the energy sector workforce. But again, thank you all. We're going to keep this meeting open, so feel free to stick around and you can turn off your camera or whatever you need in the break, but we'll plan to reconvene in a few minutes.
Hi, Natasha. This is Adele. Can you hear me?
Hi, Adele. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Sandy. Do you want me to try to share my screen? I think I resolved my issues, or do you have the slides ready?
I have the slides, but if you want to share your screen, there was also a video and I didn't know which one you wanted to start with. Either way is fine.
Oh, I don't have a video. I just had slides. Was there a video?
Yeah, there were two, but I have the slides as well. So they are, yep.
Let's make sure it's the right thing, because I'm not sure what video there would be.
I'll send it to you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It was a nice video on workforce.
Oh, it was. I don't even know we had, I didn't even know we had videos.
Hold on.
As long as it's not a video of my kids or my cat, we're okay.
I mean, everybody loves a cat video. So.
It was Our Mission introduced in NYSERDA.
Yeah, I don't know how I sent that to you.
Yeah, it's nice.
I should have slides with the first slide. It shows kind of a computer picture on a computer monitor.
Yep, I have that.
Yeah, that's all I need.
Okay. Let me. Okay, have that. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Dr. Sneed, I'm glad you're able to join and be part of this. Thanks for doing it.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Adele, let me hear you pronounce your last name, so I'll do you justice this afternoon.
Hello, it's Adele Ferranti.
Ferranti. Okay, I was kind of on point.
That's pretty
Italian.
easy.
Yeah, Italian.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
How are you?
I'm great. Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I missed you guys the other day. How's the weather where you guys are?
I'm in New York and it's not too bad. It's finally starting to warm up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny season. I'm in Louisiana and we keep getting some cool days. You know, I was thinking earlier how they say around Easter, you're going to have that cool snap, but we keep having them. I think today's high is going to be in the 80s. But
Oh, it is.
It's a pretty day though.
We still drop down into low 30s at night. I still am running the heat, which is pretty interesting. I don't usually have heat on in the morning this late in the season.
Yeah, I got my heat on in my office. In fact, I'm gonna turn it off because my husband keeps the house so cold. Yeah.
It's hard when you're sitting in front of a monitor all day and then you really can feel the cold or slight change in temperature.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in the Twin Cities and it's been dropping pretty low here, which is a little bit annoying because I used Mother's Day to try to plant a bunch of things in my garden. So I'm hoping for the best.
Oh yeah, that freeze that hit down here, I guess about a month and a half ago, everybody's having to replace their shrubbery and everything because you know it was here for like a week, so we're having to redo our gardens and everything.
Ms. Campbell, this is Sharon Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
I gave Sandy my contact information for you all to get in touch with me and anybody else because I have a wealth of information and knowledge that will be very helpful to you. Been there, done that, have the gray hairs to prove it. So I think you all saw that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But I'm in Texas. I'm not in Maryland, but I am from Baltimore.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. We have, I think, 4 institutions in Texas. We work closely with Purview A&M.
Yeah, I talked to them when the American Recovery Act for solar, St. Philip's College with the Alamo College system, they did a solar project.
Mm-hmm. We don't have a current relationship with St. Philip's, but at Purview, they're heavily focused on workforce around weatherization.
Yeah.
Working with Henry there. So would love to talk to you and we'll definitely connect after today's session.
Okay, great job. I'm so glad to see this. I think you all could tell that.
Great.
Natasha, do you know if Dr. Hodges has joined? I don't see her.
She's here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Been with us all day.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was scrolling through and somehow missed you, but thank you so much for being part of this. So I think we can go ahead and get started. It looks like we have folks trickling in, so welcome everybody. Really excited to start this next session with Dr. Janice Sneed of the Southern University at Shreveport moderating. Dr. Sneed, I'll throw it over to you to get started. But I did want to encourage folks to please contribute either in real time by turning on your camera and your microphone, or by sending items into the chat. We're monitoring it and would love to elevate your expertise and insights as part of this discussion. So Dr. Sneed, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Sandy. First of all, I'm not Dr. Sneed, but I'm working on it. I'm Janice Brown Sneed. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Workforce Development at Southern University at Shreveport, which is a 2-year community college within the Southern University system, the only historically Black college system in the United States. I am currently in my 27th year with the university. It has been remarkable, ever-changing journey that has embraced inquiry, engagement, partnerships, definitely partnerships, planning, program implementation, specifically in the area of workforce and career pathways. I got my start at the university as a database administrator, so computer science was definitely my first love. Don't nobody tell my husband that. I'm a retired major from the United States Air Force. I served in testing and evaluation. We tested weapon systems, and when I discontinued my service on active duty, I went into the reserves. And while serving in the reserves, I served as a medical administrative officer, retired back in 2008. Presently, I'm pursuing my PhD in human and social services with a concentration in community interventions and leadership. I would say I'd like to think that I'm here today because of the work that SUSLA has done over the past 20 years that got its start under the leadership of Dr. Belton, who is now the president of the Southern University system, who at the time was our chancellor. He understood the importance of being a part of the change that we wanted to see within our communities. He understood, even though we were a 2-year school and transfer was important, but short-term workforce training was very important as well. And he put a lot of emphasis in that, even though many of the faculty and others didn't necessarily buy, he knew the importance of getting more short-term trainings instituted at our institution. Now, under the leadership of Dr. Ellis, he's following suit, and we are doing a lot of work. We are definitely known for the work that we've done in healthcare, numerous healthcare training programs. We are one of the few aviation maintenance technology programs. We are doing a lot of work now in electronics and engineering. We're strengthening our IT careers, and most recently, we've gotten into the area of energy, and we're very excited that we've been able to partner recently with the Department of Energy and receive a grant. That particular grant is entitled Petroleum, Oil, Wind, Electricity, Renewable, Talent in Energy Careers. We call it Power Tech. With that particular grant, our goals are to increase the number of sustained strategic public-private partnerships that will provide professional development to the underserved communities. Our second goal is to enhance the institution's capacity to deliver comprehensive outreach and recruitment strategies designed to increase the number of minorities. And last, to enhance the institution's capacity to deliver comprehensive advisement and faculty development strategies designed to increase the number of targeted populations. So basically what we're going to do is 2 objectives. We're going to create curriculum and train people in the energy field. We have already created a process technology degree program. An energy technology technician program is underway, as well as an electrical power line program. So that's a little bit about me and some of the things that we're doing at SUSLA. I'm excited to be able to introduce two wonderful ladies to you today that will be serving on the panel. As I find their information, I'll just end this saying about myself. I believe that my philosophy is that no man is an island, and together we are certainly better. So I'll start with presenting to you Adele Ferranti. I think I got it right. She's the program manager at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. She has been with this organization for 28 years, managing research and development projects approximately 10 years. She's developed and managed the first photovoltaic PV incentive program, managed the residential energy products program, including appliance rebate and high efficiency lighting programs, developed and managed award-winning residential marketing initiatives and K through 12 energy training initiatives and clean energy workforce training programs for 15 years. Wow. For the past 4 years, she has been focused on workforce training initiatives, workforce training including energy efficiency and renewable energy, technical training programs for new and existing workers throughout the clean energy supply chain. Her specialties are green jobs, training, program marketing, program design and implementation, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. Awesome, I will be calling you. Second, we have Dr. Deidre Hodges, PhD. She's the Associate Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Texas in El Paso. Dr. Hodges is an exceptional leader in photovoltaic. Y'all gonna have to help me with that word. My background's not engineering. I help I help find money for the program and solar energy research, with extensive experience in PV and related detection devices. Hodges is highly focused in advancing renewable energy, sustainable nuclear materials, and extreme photon sensing. Hodges is highly skilled in diverse and interdisciplinary collaborations. Hodges' innovation to enable and advance technologies towards sustainability. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. And we are going to open it up. We'll start, I think, with Dr. Hodges. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and get us started.
All right. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. And I'd like to make some connections first, where I did attend an HBCU. I went to Dillard University in New Orleans, and I was in a dual degree program there. So 3-2, 3 years at Dillard, 2 years at Columbia in New York, and received both the physics and electrical engineering degrees. And so I like to make another connection with Southern University, Janice. My father was a professor in chemistry at Southern, and also later the registrar at Southern. And Adele, I like to make a connection. I spend summers in Long Island, New York. So I take my students there. We go to Brookhaven National Lab. We do research in both photovoltaic, solar energy, and we spend summers there as visiting faculty. The students go with me, and we usually spend 10 hours there. We also have toured that Long Island solar farm out there on Long Island, New York. So I like to just make those connections. But I thank everyone for having, for this opportunity to participate on the panel today. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Natasha and Sandy and Henry and everyone that's here. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
All right, we will continue on with Ms. Adele.
Yes, thank you very much. As you noted, I've been at NYSERDA for nearly 30 years. Just out of college, I got my first job in energy, 30 years ago, and actually it was 35 years ago, when nobody really knew what energy jobs were going to be and what an energy job was. It was very exciting. I started out in policy work. I developed, different programs, as you noted, and I'm just very fortunate to have concentrated on workforce development and training since about 2004 at NYSERDA. And we're going to talk a little bit about NYSERDA opportunities and how we work with people that have additional barriers to employment in the clean energy economy. So thank you all very much. This was a well-organized session. I appreciate the help and the pre-event planning, and nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. Well, before we get into our questions, I think we're going to kick off with it's either a PowerPoint or a video.
That's right. Natasha, are you planning to share or should I go ahead?
If you can, because it looks like my computer is stuck.
Sure.
Great.
And I think these are Adele's slides. Is that
Correct. Okay, I think I'm back.
all right? Adele, you should be all set.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority's activities as it relates to clean energy, workforce development, and training. Next slide, please. I know there's a lot of talk about Justice 40 and making sure our investments serve those that are in disadvantaged communities, and NYSERDA certainly has that as a key mission. We're looking to advance our energy investments to combat climate change, improve health and resiliency and prosperity of New Yorkers, and making sure we're delivering those benefits equitably to all. And as I mentioned, our benefits need to go to disadvantaged communities to the tune of 40%. So much aligned with the Justice 40 proposed initiative. NYSERDA has about $108 million dedicated for workforce development and training, and that's through 2025. We have some funding opportunities that I've provided at the end of the deck. We are serving numerous audiences, existing workers, new workers, even training trainers. We are greatly focused on priority populations, individuals with additional barriers to employment. So far, we've committed about $30 million of our funding. We are on track to train about 32,000. That's direct and indirect because a lot of our programs that we fund are sustainable. Through our on-the-job training program, for example, we've already placed over 500 people in clean energy jobs with a wage subsidy, and about a quarter of those are from priority populations, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We've also placed 680 interns so far in clean energy businesses. So we're developing career paths, we're exposing individuals to new clean energy careers, and we're developing clean energy training capacity. Next slide, please. So I won't go over all this, but it's just good background information. Again, it's the target audiences with focus on priority populations, and they're listed here. We're looking to focus on disadvantaged communities, low-income communities, environmental justice communities, and we really cover the full gamut of clean energy technology areas, as Janice mentioned earlier. HVAC, building operations and maintenance, offshore wind, smart grid, photovoltaics. So these programs cover all technology areas throughout the supply chain, whether it's manufacturers, distributors, installers, operators, etc. Next slide, please. So NYSERDA funds training. We're not going out there and developing a whole bunch of training programs that we're implementing. We go to the market and say, tell us what you need. It can be a community college, a trade program, a community-based organization. We are asking the market to tell us where the gaps are and the needs are. Has to meet business needs. We're not just going to train people and hope they get a job someday. Again, it's got to be a clear market gap. Always has a technical training component in our programs. And again, we're focusing on priority populations. Any new training program that we support has to have career preparation, job placement services as part of that program. So that's really a key thing for us. Next slide. I just want to quickly go through a few examples because we're doing some really great stuff. I mentioned we're on track to train over 30,000. And here are just some examples of projects that really are focusing on priority populations. This is new or non-traditional employment for women. We're trying to prepare women for construction jobs by giving them some green energy training to make sure that they're prepared for clean energy technologies as they enter the construction trades. The curriculum includes things such as environmental literacy, sustainability, efficiency, and of course, construction. Most of our training programs pre-COVID, and it's starting up again soon, hands-on skills training, making sure people have hands-on training, usually soft skills training, professional skills training. In this case, they're doing physical conditioning, mentoring, site tours. And this particular project, and this is the important part, We are partnering with Con Edison, a utility here in New York, National Grid and PSEG, other utilities, Cushman and Wakefield, a property management company developer, the MTA, City of New York's Department of Environmental Protection, and 30 registered apprenticeship programs. So again, the training is tied to business needs with placement opportunities for those students. Next slide. Just want to give you a couple of examples here. We're working with this company, Wildan Energy Solutions. They developed a small commercial energy auditing training and internship program, again, to support a utility here in New York, Consolidated Edison. The training is really getting those auditors ready for doing field work and making sure they understand the various building systems, such as lighting, environmental considerations, and building envelope. Quite a few training partners, as you can see here: Sustainable United Neighborhoods, Energy Economic Development Corp. We have about 120 participants, all from environmental justice communities. They had 4 courses: green economy, lighting, HVAC systems, OSHA certification. So again, we trained about 124. 61 are from disadvantaged communities, and already we've placed 20 of those graduates in jobs. Some may be in internships still, and the goal here again is job placement. Next slide. Just a third one I wanted to mention, a great program. We've done a few projects with Stacks and Jules, and they are getting students from disadvantaged communities, and they're New York City high school students, ready for jobs related to advanced lighting controls, heat pumps, building integration, and they're focusing on soft skills training, technical skills training, again, to get those students ready for family sustaining careers in the building automation industry. They work with partners such as UA Maker Academy, the South Bronx Community Charter High School, and the Lower East Side Girls Club. Again, it's a great curriculum with various programs to get those students ready for jobs. And as you can see here, we've trained 118 in this one project already. They've received a good number of recognized certifications. We've secured 46 paid internships already and 4 job placements. And this is a relatively new project. The really neat thing about what NYSERDA is doing, we're not only supporting these training institutions who are providing career paths and addressing some of those barriers to employment, but through our on-the-job training program and our internship program, we have funding for businesses to hire these students as interns, as well as full-time employees through the on-the-job training program. I think that might be it with just a wrap up. Oh, sorry, one more. Another good example, the Youth Action Programs and Homes, Inc. This is building operations training program. We have a lot of folks in New York State that operate and maintain building energy systems. This is working with 30 youth in Upper Manhattan and the South Bronx for entry-level jobs and multifamily businesses. They're working with CUNY, the Building Performance Lab, a training entity, and the Association for Energy Affordability. They get 72 hours of classroom and hands-on training. They get an internship and wraparound services, professional development programming, worksite coaching, case management, and job placement. And as you can see here, we've done interviews already. They've secured paid internships, and we're working with businesses to place and retain those students. So I just wanted to have here as a reference our current funding opportunities that support the initiatives I've talked about and a lot more. And this represents the initiatives that are supported by our $108 million budget. So just wanted to tee up some of the things we're doing and how we're addressing barriers to employment for people with looking for clean energy careers that have additional barriers. So thank you.
Oh, wow, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Let me say, I'll start with this question. What do you believe? And we've kind of talked about it here and there, and I know you've talked about it throughout the conference, but what do you believe to be the primary barriers to entry into workforce for prospective energy and clean tech professionals in your state or your communities across the nation? What do you think, ladies? We'll start with Deidre.
All right. There was some good discussion on this earlier. And I really love some of the discussion. You know, I think one of the barriers we're talking about the pipeline. There is a pipeline. There are problems with the pipeline, but there are students being trained and prepared. We heard that from the presentations today. So we do have a pipeline, but getting these students into these positions, in the earlier meetings today, hiring, who do they hire? And I think, that's a barrier. We're not seeing, our students hired in these positions. Why aren't they being hired in these positions? There was some good discussion on that. One guy earlier said that students maybe don't apply because of the way the job description is written. And then in hiring in general, maybe there is some unconscious bias. If you get all of these applicants, you're looking at applications. Another gentleman earlier said out of 100 applications, only 3 were underrepresented minorities. So who's going to get the hire? I think it was said in the session, hiring has to be intentional. So we need to see some intentional activities. I think that's a barrier, but if we can address that in the hiring process, and not only in the hiring process, but also in promotion and higher management. We saw stats yesterday and today overwhelmingly underrepresented minorities are not present in energy jobs at higher management and leadership positions. It's not only in the energy sector, but we also see this in academia. We see this in industry. We see this big disparity. And so what's the barrier? How do we fix it? And one way I think is with hiring and in promotion and intentional.
Yeah, we noticed, in the Shreveport area, it's with young people, we find that they, go toward things that they are familiar with. And because of the low percentage of individuals in the community, the minorities that are in energy fields, sometimes they just don't have the awareness. So one thing we created in our area is Manufacturing Week to get more minorities interested in manufacturing. So now we're thinking about taking that whole concept, because with Manufacturing Week, we work with all the local high schools, and I think maybe even some of the middle schools, and allow them to visit the manufacturing plants or visit the colleges that have those various programs and expose them to those careers. And then we even go so much as having advertisements and things on the TV. It's just a bombardment of information about the careers in manufacturing. So I think we're going to look at doing something very similar to exposing the community with respect to energy. Yeah.
Yes, I saw one of the students yesterday graduating in chemical engineering. He made the comment that he was not aware. So that's a problem on the pipeline side, right? We have all of these students, but now they're not aware of these opportunities. So one of the things I do is I take students with me in the summers to Brookhaven National Lab, to the National Renewable Energy Lab. I fly there with them. It's their first time flying. It's their first time leaving home. So there are issues on the pipeline side, and maybe my students don't have all of the skills necessary, for these positions. So there are issues, there are barriers on both sides that have to be addressed.
Adele, did you have anything to add?
I agree with both of you. And I think certainly there's a pipeline that we certainly need to do more to really introduce people to these career opportunities, these career pathways. And in New York, I see this great issue of trying to balance employer needs, right? It's time, it's place, it's opportunity. Where's the demand for the jobs, and how does that line up where the disadvantaged communities are? Do we have training centers there? Can we put all those pieces together? And it is a great challenge. So we're looking at balancing, as you mentioned, the pipeline, the supply, the demand, while we try to generate more interest through high schools and technical high schools, community colleges, and to create that, interest in careers.
Right. And I do feel that process has to be intentional. I can recall when we first started these discussions in our area, and we met with one of the energy companies to talk about the line worker program. And I had one of the organizational leaders make a comment that was kind of discriminatory to me because they said something along the lines where, you have to really be careful about who you bring into this field. It could be life and death. And so I just really didn't know how to take that. But at any rate, that person's no longer with the organization, and we are actually in a partnership now, and they're one of our lead agencies as far as working with us to develop the curriculum, provide intern opportunities. But the mindset of the agencies and their willingness to work with you through that process is very important. And so it's a lot of bringing in their family members and people, and you just got to broaden that dynamic. I'm sure you all talked about that today. Yes, indeed. Any other comments about ways we can tear down barriers?
Yeah, so on that side, where it is intentional, if you bring in underrepresented groups into their workforce and into higher management, there has to be a support system there. It has to be welcoming. It has to be inclusive. If it's not, you're going to have a retention issue. So, so there are several things that need to happen on that front.
And you
bring
make
in
a
the
good point.
students. Yeah.
You make a good point because an individual who was a graduate in the engineering department at Southern kind of made the way. He smoothed the ground and got us in a position where we was making some good progress. All right, any questions from the audience or input with respect to that?
Dr. Steve.
One thing I
Yeah.
would share from yesterday, and I would encourage, and Sandy, I'm not sure if we can drop the research findings link for the participants. What was highlighted in that report from yesterday from BW is the importance of mentorship and sponsorship, both at the employer level as well as for students. So I would definitely encourage everyone to take a look at those findings. One question, I have a couple questions. I'm not sure if anyone from DOE is on the call, but I think it would be great, Sandy, for us to, in our recommendations, lift up the very point made earlier around demand and prioritizing the pipeline, right? So there's a pipeline for available jobs that are there now, or that will be there in the next 2 to 5 years. And then there's the pipeline that needs to connect students from the middle school to the high school to college and entry into the workforce. And those are 2 different timelines. And I think there need to be different approaches to address the issue because the timing is critical. You're not going to get a middle school or even a high school student in the pipeline for jobs that are available now that we need to fill now. So I think that's something that we might want to lift up and engage with DOE about as we continue with this work.
Right. Yeah, and the proposal that we recently was funded for, that was very important for us to build those relationships across the state and nationally. Our advisory board is made up of company leaders in our local area, but it's made up of individuals that are on the national level as well. And that positions us for opportunities for donations to the institution to help us as we build out our programs. It positions us for opportunities for our students, and not only our students, but our faculty to have externship opportunities. And then as we do the various camps or we do the manufacturing week that I was mentioning earlier, we'll have those individuals in place to help us make those things happen. But it is, like you said, Natasha, it is certainly a comprehensive process when you're talking about developing a program in the energy field and you haven't been operating in that window at all,
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Natasha said about timing. In New York, of course, we're advancing some very large scale offshore wind projects, and everybody's excited about offshore wind jobs, but some of those facilities won't be built till 2022, 2023, 2024, and people want to be trained now for those jobs. So we are thinking about career paths that develop those foundational skills, transferable skills, different paths to jobs, right? Perhaps we are going to gear someone for an offshore wind job, but some of those skills may also have applicability in building electrification, energy efficiency. So we want to make sure there are different paths, different off-ramps, and different connections to the clean energy, the broader clean energy economy. Not everybody's going to be ready, willing, and able to climb a wind turbine. I know that's a challenge. Even working on water is a challenge. But if we give them the skills they need to have that as an option, or energy efficiency, there are several career paths for individuals, and we're not just pigeonholing them into one area and have to wait for those jobs to materialize.
Yes, Sandy and Natasha, I know we don't have a lot of time, so if you see some questions from the audience that you want to interject, that's fine as well. But in the meantime,
thanks, Dr. Sneed, or Janice. It looks like we have a question from Nia Grundy, who raised her hand.
You're muted.
Oh,
yeah, I just realized that. I'm sorry. I'm Nia. I'm a rising junior at Howard University. And I agree with basically everything that's been said today. Very informative. I just had a quick question, kind of to bounce off of like the barriers that we were talking about earlier. I feel like, especially for my age group, since we were younger, we've really been pushed to believe that STEM is the future and that we have to like really science and technology. And I think for a lot of people that can be really intimidating. And that's definitely like a big barrier for a lot of people that I know. So I was just wondering how you find ways to encourage younger people or anybody who has an interest in the field to actually take the steps and like learn the skills and actually try to get involved.
Adele?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some of the more successful initiatives we've seen in the past, for example, if we're in high schools, we have brought in photovoltaic or PV installers, for example, to make presentations, to tell them what they do on their job, to bring them out to job sites. It's really trying to bring some of those professionals into the schools, make the connections, internships, field trips, really giving them something to see as opposed to just trying to tell them about the jobs and the opportunities. We think that's really important.
Yeah, we've done that at Southern. We've had energy camps for many summers, and taking those young people. We actually took a group to NASA one year. So those type of exposures while they're young is very important for us in middle school, even in elementary school. But then we go on from there and we do dual enrollment. Dual enrollment in our state is where students are getting college credit while they're still in high school. So we're working, as we're developing these curriculums in energy, we will be working with our school board to institute some of these opportunities for the students while they are yet in high school. So those are some of the things, that educating our recruiters, educating our career service offices to appreciate the jobs, taking the report that you all have been talking about today and sharing that with the faculty and other individuals to have an appreciation. Hey, energy is a great opportunity for us.
And I think just for Nia as a student, it's really connecting with your career services office. You're in Washington, D.C. There are an abundance of opportunities at the federal agency, at the Department of Energy. There are so many internships and fellowship programs that, I think it was either earlier today or yesterday, if the primary DOE program, the deadline passed. So part of it is how do we get information to students, and how do we get information to the career services office at HBCUs and minority serving institutions, and how do we utilize professors to share this information and share it in a timely manner and prepare students for these opportunities. CDAC, we engage with organizations and companies to really share information about internship programs as soon as possible. Last, I think November, December, we engaged with RMI, we engaged with the Solar Energy Industry Association to really help students. And I think probably the most important thing a student can do is to ask, right? All of us are on this call at 2:50 on a Friday because this is important, right? It's not a rehearsal, it's real life. So if you're a student at Howard University, you should ask, Natasha, I hear you talk about clean energy all the time. This is where I am. How can you help me? Be bold in what you want. The research findings said it yesterday. You need a mentor, and guess what? No one knows that more than you. And what is the worst thing I can say? I can say no, or I cannot respond. But if you don't ask, you won't get that information.
Thank you so much. I'll be very
I like to hop in on that too, even though I'm not a professional. I'm a rising senior at North Carolina A&T, chemical engineering, and I would say that Nia, it comes down to like knowing what's out there, and it took me a while to figure it out. My freshman year, I did research, and then I went like and did commercialization research on clean energy stuff, and it kind of exposed me to the fact that although a lot of these innovations happen in STEM, there still needs to be business majors, investors, financial analysts, and things like that that can help the further development of it. And then there's also lawyers that go into patent law and things like that to help protect the intellectual property. So although it's a lot about STEM is the future, there's a lot of other functional areas that help the development of STEM activities.
Very good. Thank you, Nick.
And I'd like to add to that, to the students and Terrell. I remember yesterday your statement and I was shocked. So I think that's a broken part where the information, the opportunities that's out there, it's not getting to the students in the pipeline. And myself as a student at Dillard University, I was afforded some great opportunities because I went to faculty in my department and I reached out to them. So I want to say that to all of the students here. I say that to the students right now in my department. Make connections with faculty, and those faculty, they have information and they will share it with you. So if you make contacts and connections, get involved if they're doing research. But at Dillard University, I was knocking on the door of my physics professor and my chemistry professor, and they say, hey, we have this opportunity at Corning Glassworks to do summer research. We have this opportunity at Stanford. Are you interested? I'm like, yes. And so it was only because I asked them. I went to their office doing office hours. Had I not been proactive and took that action, I would not have been afforded some of those initial opportunities. And now I tell that to all my students, get to know your faculty. They know information and they can expose you to opportunities, but get to know them, not just one, get to know several faculty, develop, someone said it earlier today, develop those relationships. They are important for these opportunities. They know we need to get the information out better to the students, but we don't. But meanwhile, for all of the students that are here, get to know your faculty. They know they have relationships and they can open opportunities, open doors for you.
I agree. I will say at Howard, the career services office, they send a lot of emails. They're actually very on top of that. I think it is partially on the students to actually take action, but yeah, I think career services are also very helpful for a lot of people.
Okay.
Yeah, we find that, I don't know if since COVID-19, the response from our students for the career fairs, opportunities for internships, for some reason it has, it's gone down. But I see we're coming back from the COVID, so hopefully we'll see greater participation. But yeah, our career services at SUSLA, Southern University of Shreveport, they're doing an awesome job, but the response to those opportunities are limited. And if you take advantage, as I know Nia and Tara, if you take advantage of those opportunities, that so positions you for a better job when you graduate.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Related to that, when I was an undergraduate student a million years ago, I strung together in 4 years 5 small internships. And at the time, they weren't paid internships, but I negotiated to have them be credits as part of my electives. So I'd get one elective credit for one or two. And by the end of my 4 years, I had strung together almost a year of experience. And that gave me an advantage. It was, you have to be creative. You have to work with your professors. You've got to find a niche. And you asked earlier about, technical jobs or information on technical jobs. And not everyone may like to be in a technical job, but we see a need for technical sales individuals, people that will help with marketing, consumer outreach, education about technologies, people to design websites and do some really cool stuff to promote businesses, clean energy businesses. So, I think you have to think broadly and, beyond just the technology to see all those supporting jobs in the supply chain that may be a great fit as well.
Mhm. I was looking, kind of changing the subject a bit. I was reading in the report that more than 2/3, 38% of white energy worker survey respondents reported making $100,000 or more per year at their jobs, compared to 18% of Blacks or African-American respondents and 19% of Hispanics. Conversely, Blacks and African-Americans and Hispanic respondents were much more likely to report making $50,000 or less. To what do you contribute that wide variance, Deidre, Adele?
Back to the disparities. We see the disparities, in race and in gender, in pay, not only in energy, but also in other sectors, in academia and industry. So those disparities are there in income, unfortunately. We're bringing it to light, but we haven't seen the change yet. But the disparities are there. Why?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, why? Bias, it's bias. So in that big report you have that you presented yesterday, you see the bias. You see it in, in energy, and from hiring to pay, and it's across sectors. So it's not just energy.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
In the
So
last couple
go
of
ahead,
minutes,
Cindy.
sorry, in the last couple of minutes of this discussion, I did see that there was a hand raised from Zach Valdez. Zach, if you'd care to share a few words, and after that, we'll plan to transition into the next discussion, but definitely encourage folks to keep sharing your perspectives. This has been really informative. Zach, it looks like you're on mute, potentially. We can't hear you. No, unfortunately, your mic isn't working. If you want to put your question into the chat, we can try to tackle it.
I can do that.
Oh, actually, we can hear you now.
Okay, wonderful. So when speaking about equity, let's not forget about the gender equity gap, right? In energy, it's probably larger than some of the other ones. So I think that's something that, from an industry standpoint, Adele, that's a huge hurdle for you to jump. And I think they're making strides to that, the same way that they want to increase equity in the energy field. And we've been talking about K through 12 and undergraduate. And so the way that I think about it is, like, we have to get students confident first, right? They have to be aware that they can do this. Then we have to make them competent, right? So we need to make sure that they know all the things that they're supposed to know when they go into that. But one of the things that we're all kind of tiptoeing around is the idea of community. And when I was in high school, I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, but never met a Hispanic teacher that I had. Didn't really know what an engineer was. My parents were, blue collar workers. And so being aware of that, when I got into engineering and then worked in the energy field, that all happened post high school because I went to an HSI. Now, when we talk, the only reason that I even thought about getting my PhD later was because I saw professors who were Hispanic. And so, this is obviously a huge issue with academia in general, but I think we need to find better ways to create the C1B1 approach to get students into the energy field, right? So if you have Hispanic, Black, Native American folks working in your industry or working in academia, they need to be the ones that sort of are the voices, because that oftentimes forming that community and having that cultural competency creates that intentional inclusion that industry and academia are often looking forward to get them into those sectors. And so providing pathways and lines of communication so that students understand, like, hey, you're not going to come into an industry that's predominantly not for you, or doesn't look like, you know, where you came from. They can kind of change that misconception in their own mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
that's
sorry, I am a Science and Technology Policy Fellow with the Manufacturing USA program at NIST, but I worked in oil and gas research and did my PhD at Baylor University.
wow. That's
Okay.
awesome, Zach. That's beautiful. We're gonna have to transition, right, ladies? I want to thank Adele and our other Deidre for presenting today, and all of you that had input. It was a great discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This has been a really wonderful day. And to Natasha's point earlier, the fact that everybody's willing to contribute their Friday afternoon on a spring day is really a testament to the importance of this conversation. So for the next and final panel, we'll be broadening the conversation to the technology innovation ecosystem, which clean energy is such an integral part of. So I'm really thrilled to introduce Dr. Sumesh Arora as the session moderator. He's the Energy Office Director in the Mississippi Development Authority. Dr. Vanessa Chan, Chief Commercialization Officer at DOE's Office of Technology Transitions, and Dr. Chris Ford, the Mission to Market Manager for the Applied Research Center at Florida International University. So Sumesh, I'll kick it over to you to get us started. I've got your slides teed up, and feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Sandy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect, great. Well, I know it's late on Friday afternoon, but I'm really truly honored to be heading up this session this afternoon, because this topic is really near and dear to my heart, on top of the fact that I've really been in the energy business for a couple of decades now. And it's I can't say that I feel like I've worked a day in my life, because it's really been fun. And yes, there have been challenges along the way, but they've all really been interesting challenges. And I think that's what makes us stronger and really more attuned to the needs that we have, and those are the things that we have to overcome. So as Sandy mentioned, my name is Sumesh Arora. I'm the director for the State Energy Office in Mississippi. And we're in some ways blessed to have the type of population that we have. On the other hand, it's a challenge for us as well too. But diversity and inclusion is not an option for us. It's part of our everyday lives. It's almost 40% African American population. So no matter what we do, where we go, that's just our everyday mix of the population in Mississippi. So really, that's part of our culture, part of our everyday lives. And so what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is actually one of the new programs that we just launched that is focused on energy and innovation in the energy and the agriculture space. And I'm going to introduce the two speakers, the panelists that we had this afternoon, and truly honored to have both of them on this panel. I just have a couple of slides that I'll go through really quickly, and then really want to spend more time with Dr. Chan and Dr. Ford and really hear from them. And we have time really to have an open discussion like we did in the last couple of panels. The program I was going to mention really quickly is really, we are so grateful to receive an award from the U.S. Department of Energy through the Office of Technology Transitions, which is an honor to have Dr. Chan on there. It's called the Mississippi Virtual Quad. The program that DOE ran is called the Energy Program for Innovation Clusters, as you see up there, EPIC. And really, the virtual quad is a play on words. Quad, as we know in the energy geeks, it's 10 to the 15 BTUs, but it's also a quadrangle. And given the pandemic, that was really, we're still in, hopefully the tail end of it, we realized that there is probably a need to be able to connect our assets that we have, especially our universities, in a virtual manner, and then bring in the public and the public-private partners as well too. But keeping the focus on innovation and entrepreneurship, and really looking at the strengths that we have in Mississippi. So Mississippi is strong in energy as well as in agriculture. Traditionally, it's been a very strong agricultural state. And even now, both of these two sectors make up over 25% of the GDP for the state when we put energy and ag together. So we felt like this was really appropriate to be able to figure out how do we encourage new technology development. And then our key tenet in this effort has been from the very beginning, inclusive innovation. We want to make sure that we reach out to the rural entrepreneurs because we have such a rural state, only 3 million people in the entire state. And then also include the HBCU. So we're really fortunate to have Jackson State University as one of the research universities. And you heard earlier from in the panel that JSU has been one of the leading research HBCUs in the country, one of the early two that were R2 universities. So we're fortunate to have that right in our backyard. So the great partnership developed in the last really just few months. We won the award on October 7th, and we had the program live on February 1st. And we just announced the first cohort of 10 companies. And out of those 10 companies, at least 3 are minority companies. 3 of them are rural companies. And, you know, the other thing mentioned I heard also was the fact that, hey, let's not all focus on solar. And I can really proud to say that we have the companies that are in there. One of them is doing improving the concrete properties of concrete using biomass-based graphene, all the way to the other end of that's trying to make sure that the cows don't get infected during artificial insemination. So, you know, it just ranges the gamut. So the other thing we also try to make sure that we stress the fact that technology is very broad. We throw a broad, you know, very wide net when we talk about technology. It's not just information technology and not just any type of energy technology, whether it's smart grid or batteries. It's really very broad, and that's where we think that the ideas come from anywhere. If you can go to the next slide, I just want to talk really about the ecosystem that we are helping build, or trying to build, really, I should say. One of the other goals that we had also was not try to reinvent the wheel in any way possible. Is to really the goal for the V-Quad was to leverage as many resources that are out there that are possible. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we have universities. We have University of Ole Miss, Jackson State University, Southern Mississippi, Mississippi State. All 4 of the research universities came together at the table. The Institutes of Higher Learning, which is the board that governs these universities. And then we have a nonprofit, Innovate Mississippi, which I spent 14 years working at Innovate Mississippi. They have a seed fund, they have angel networks access, they have mentor networks, and we also, SBR, the Small Business Innovation Research, and the STTR type grants, that's really an important part of that. And one of the metrics that we are focused on to make sure that through this V-Quad program, we can actually help more companies get ready to apply for the SBR grants. Mississippi is also one of the states that lacks in terms of SBR awards. So we are hoping that we can change some of that. Again, you know, knowing that it's a very competitive program, knowing only maybe 15% of the applications get funded, but that's still one of the metrics that we are going by. And we offer a phase 0 grant, and some of the other states offer the phase 0 grant as well too, which is basically anybody who really is trying to put an application together can get $3,000 to be able to put a more successful application together. And then the organization that I work with, which is the Mississippi Development Authority and the State Energy Office, that's the SEO stands there for. That's but we're bringing in other state agencies in our network as well too, including the Department of Agriculture and Commerce, ERDIC, which is a Department of Defense facility. It's Army Corps of Engineers facility. It's one of their largest laboratories networks in the country that's headquartered in Mississippi. Certainly DOE, very grateful for the award that we got from OTT. And then rural development, we heard from them as well earlier as well too. And then NASA has a strong presence in Mississippi. And just recently we joined the DOE's connector network. So you see that logo out there as well too. Again, I mentioned, I just have 2 slides because I wanted to kind of give you a visual of the effort that we have going on. But in terms of the work that we do with HBCU is not limited to just the innovation aspect of it. We really do get involved in, and in fact, this next month, we're going to be working with Jackson State on a STEM boot camp. That's going to be a 2-week-long boot camp. We have brought in one of the programs that we work with on a national level, and a lot of state energy offices actually do that. It's a program called NEED, that's a National Energy Education Development Program. And it's really broken out, and it's really, the reason why I mentioned that also because a lot of discussion was taking place on how do we encourage early engagement through schools or through career counselor. But NEED is a great program. They just celebrated their 40th anniversary last year. And we are actually going to bring in that curriculum to these students next week at the camp. And the neat part about what the JSU summer camp is, what excites me the most, is the fact that they want to follow this for a cohort of first generation students and follow them through the next 4 years. So we'll really get a chance to work with them and see really what the progression for those students will be like. And we're also supporting a high school energy academy, which is also in one of the most impoverished counties in the state. But that's also a public-private partnership, because one of the utilities is a part of that. The state legislature actually put some funds into it. And then Department of Energy Employment Security, which is DOF, Department of Labor funding. So, I think also the thing about getting creative about not only marketing yourself or finding a job for yourself, but also finding the resources and how do you really bundle those resources together. Sound like a Progressive Guy commercial, right? Bundling those resources. But I think it's really important, right, that you really have to look at what all things that you have access to and how can you make them work together. It really is like a jigsaw puzzle that you have to find. When I talk about jigsaw puzzles, the two speakers that we have today, I think they probably do it better than anybody else. So I'll quit talking and let me introduce both of those speakers to it. Dr. J. Chris Ford, who's the Mission to Market Manager at the Applied Research Center at Florida International Universities, has spent a lot of his career doing just that. He's received his BS and Master's and PhD in Mechanical Engineering from Georgia Tech and a BS in Mathematics and dual degree program from Morehouse College. So got the HBCU connection there. Atlanta is close, near dear to my heart. In fact, heading there this afternoon for a graduation for my daughter there. So, but Dr. Ford was an expert consultant with the Department of Energy, with special emphasis on inclusion, technology transfer, and economic development. And in this role, he served as a change agent to catalyze the DOE technology commercialization ecosystem while assisting minority and small businesses, impacting underserved communities, and including minority-serving institutions. Dr. Vanessa Chan, who have not personally met yet, and really looking forward to hearing from her, is the Chief Commercialization Officer and the Director of the Office of Technology Transitions at the Department of Energy. In this role, she is responsible for all the commercialization activities across DOE, the 17 national laboratories, and the department's other research and production facilities across the country. This includes advocating and advancing clear pathways for the commercialization of innovation technologies, ensuring that the discoveries happening in the DOE's world-class facilities make their way out into the lab, into the labs and out in the commercial space. Dr. Chan comes to DOE on a leave of absence from her position at the undergraduate chair of the Material Science and Engineering Department at University of Pennsylvania, School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. She earned her PhD in Material Sciences from Massachusetts, from MIT, and her BSc in engineering from UPenn. So please welcome Dr. Ford and Dr. Chan. Dr. Ford, if you'd like to give some prepared comments, and we'll move to Dr. Chan.
Yes, so good afternoon. Thank you everyone for having me. I acknowledge Ignacio and my partners in HBCU Crimes at HBCU CDAC, Natasha, who we also share some time working in the Obama administration. Maybe to maybe highlight some things that was already spoken of in my bio, but relevant to our conversation. So yeah, I'm a proud graduate of Morehouse College, and I often say that the impact of being a Morehouse man has carried me even to this day. And so that's to speak to the power of HBCUs. What I also would say that, the experience that I've had working with the Department of Energy, not only during the Obama administration, but actually during early part of my research career, actually part of my PhD research and beyond was actually at National Energy Technology Lab, NETL, in Morgantown, West Virginia, in fuel cells and battery tech. So the national labs really play a key role in not only, and it's relative to our conversation, but the R&D-based workforce development is a really critical point. In terms of this discussion today, I want to highlight some points from what we do here at FIU Applied Research Center. I'm principal scientist and Mr. Market Manager. I want to highlight FIU. It is a minority-serving institution, but also it represents an evolving model of how MSIs and HBCUs can partner with the Department of Energy and other state agencies like NASIO. I want to highlight those points, but I also want to speak to the Mission Market Program funded by the Department of Energy. We're wrapping up that program here this year and share some points from that program, and then give a little bit of details about the motivation behind it. And I think this has been spoken over the past 2 days, and I want to bring out some key points. So FIU, so the Applied Research Center is a 30-year-old partnership with the Department of Energy, specifically the Office of Environmental Management. And at the beginning of that journey, FIU was a tier 2 or research, R2 research organization by the Carnegie Foundation, as highlighted by Ivory Tolson in the previous panel, in terms of HSIs and HBCUs. Now, critical how now, we received an R1 designation about 3 or 4 years ago, and I would have to say the partnership with the Department of Energy really funneled that effort in terms of the growing of the R&D base. We now manage probably about $10 million per year in research and development. The majority of that is a good bulk of that is between Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. Now, one thing why we decided to look at creating the Mission to Market program was we've done a fantastic job. We probably over 100 STEM students that have gone through our program as a DOE fellow have gone into the workforce. We have like a 99% placement rate in STEM. We do internships every summer. But one of the challenges we've seen is if you look at the economy in South Florida, despite all the attention and buzz recently, if you peel back the innovation ecosystem layers, we're not doing a very good job in tech startups. And so the Mission to Market program was designed, how do you leverage all these federal assets that FIU has been a part of in South Florida and Florida in general, but churn it into tech startups. And so the impetus behind the Mission to Market program, which its objective is how do you monetize and catalyze innovation ecosystems around MSIs built around the intellectual property underutilized by the federal government into our local innovation ecosystem. So the Mission to Market program has 4 key things that we focus on. Number 1, STEM entrepreneurial development, not STEM development, workforce development, STEM entrepreneurial workforce development. We've trained 200 students in 3.5 years in STEM entrepreneurship, and I'll unpack that during our discussion. Secondly, innovation ecosystem development, that wonderful chart that Sumesh had highlighted. We designed a way you measure an ecosystem and its effectiveness, and that was some of the research that we had worked on. Thirdly, we've built a business incubator network, and very similar to the Quad model. We've designed specific curriculum. Actually, I'm very familiar with the NEEDS program that Sumesh identified, but we've taken some best practices from lean entrepreneurship and built into our model. How do you design businesses that leverage intellectual property and intellectual capital assets? It's a really key point. It's different than just saying, let's do entrepreneurship. How do you do intellectual property-based entrepreneurship as a part of your venture thesis? So we built a curriculum and we've started to design the scaling strategy for a network that we've built throughout the state. Fourthly, tech transfer commercialization. The federal government does a great job in creating patents. You know, the Bayh-Dole Act is 40 years old, but we've had challenges in the federal government in terms of commercializing those research assets. And so we've, in our program in 3.5 years, just finished our cohort 3, we've serviced 20 entrepreneurs to complete our cohort. We've serviced about another 23 innovators and entrepreneurs. And we've had 2 license agreements come out of this cohorts, 2 pending, and businesses that have completed and started to scale up activities. They've generated more than $2.5 million in revenue in less than a few years. And so commercializing research and monetizing research is a critical element of that. So what's driving this is that we identify in the Mission Market program as something that's is sitting there in the federal government, is that the Department of Energy patent portfolio, and I look forward to hearing Vanessa's, Dr. Chan's thoughts here in a moment. I've done analysis with some others, and we believe the 24,000 patents sitting there at the Department of Energy is worth no less than $80 billion in present value that is untapped currently. To give you an idea of why that's important, if you keep up with the stock market, currently the S&P 500, all the public equities in the United States of America right now is worth about $35 trillion. You've seen, despite the pandemic, the stock market has still continued to rise aggressively. If you break down the S&P 500 and the public equity markets, 90% of that value is from patents into intangible assets. So we can roughly estimate there is $20 trillion in the public markets from patented technologies. Now, if we're trying to undo the term I haven't heard in probably 2 days, issues of institutional and structural racism. We need to translate wealth systems such as intellectual property assets into our businesses. And so we've designed our incubator program to leverage that value from the Department of Energy and other federal agencies into our Black and brown businesses. So all those businesses I mentioned, we've incubated 20 plus, all are either from women or minority groups. We have literally 95+% inclusion in our business practices. Now, another key point I want to point out why this is important. If you unpack the layering of types of businesses in Black and brown communities, they're underrepresented in the tech field. So specifically, you're not, and this was touched on in the last panel, you're not seeing Black and brown business starting enough tech companies. We hear the stats on venture capital, you may not be aware of, but 2.7% of venture capital goes to Black and Latinx businesses. If you peel that layer back, less than 2% of companies are actually, of tech companies are actually started by Black and Latinx companies. So we've done a good job of translating STEM education, but we're not translating STEM education into STEM entrepreneurship. And there's some structural issues for that we can unpack. So the Mission to Market program, why these stats are important, we want to, the full title of the initiative is Minority Serving Institution Mission to Market for Inclusive Economic Development. So the goal is you can leverage these HBCU communities, HSI's communities, to build an ecosystem that starts to translate all those research assets into economic development. So last stat I'll say and then get over to Dr. Chan. If you look at tech transfer from an economic driver standpoint, there's been a 10-year study looked at DoD patent portfolios, not one done on DOE's portfolio yet, but they're comparable in terms of value. The Department of Defense patent portfolio, for every license agreement you generate from one DOE or one Department of Defense patent or a license agreement, that one patent would generate 13 to 26 jobs. It would generate jobs that pay $80,000 per year, and you would see no less than $5 million of direct economic impact. So in the context of job creation, economic development, licensing technology is a great indicator of economic growth. I have other points about SBR, but I want to keep my comments brief. I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Vanessa, would you like to please provide your thoughts and comments? I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
You think after 15 months of Zoom calls, I figured out how to unmute myself. First of all, thank you, Sandy and NASCIO, for inviting me. And Samesh, thank you for a wonderful opening to this session and doing a shout out on EPIC. And Chris, it's exciting to hear about the work that you're thoughtfully doing to drive entrepreneurship through your Mission to Market program. We personally are really excited about everything that's being done at OTT and the kinds of activities that we're trying to do to catalyze and drive diversity. So to set the stage for all of you, Secretary Granholm identified the opportunity in the clean energy economy pretty early on. And by 2030, this market is going to be worth $23 trillion. And DOE has been charged with making sure that we are developing and deploying the technologies that really going to corner the market on the global stage. And to do that, it's really an all hands on deck kind of goal. I mean, 23 trillion is a pretty big number. And we recognize that to seize this opportunity, it's going to take engagement from Americans of all walks of life, background, regions, and income levels. And this is one of the reasons why the Biden administration and DOE has really made energy justice and equity a central part of the Build Back Better agenda. And my friend Shalonda Baker is at the helm of that. So together, we're looking to improve the diversity of where funding goes to, making sure it's going to underrepresented people and groups, because it leads to better outcomes. There's been a ton of work done out there that knows that as soon as you've got diversity, the outcomes are better. And we know that we still have a lot of work to do across the department to strengthen the links to MSIs, HBCUs, and diverse groups. And that's why we're excited about EPIC, and Samesh, you kind of framed it very nicely in terms of the way that even just a $50,000 prize can go a really long way. So we really are making moves to shore up those connections and relationships. And we're also making sure that the benefits of the clean energy revolution are delivered in the most equitable way. So at the very top level, President Biden signed an executive order in his very first week, establishing the Justice 40 initiative. At DOE, the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity, led by Shalonda Baker, will lead this effort, developing a plan to deliver 40% of the overall benefits of climate investments to disadvantaged communities and inform equitable research, development, demonstration, and deployment within the department. And last week, Secretary Granholm sat down with a group of leaders at Howard University, and it was the very first event she's done in person to hear directly from students and faculty on the challenges facing diversity in STEM. The same day, DOE also announced $17 million in funding to support internships, research opportunities for underrepresented schools, including 26 MSIs, and university-led projects to advance research and training for advanced energy applications. And so really DOE is standing behind the importance of this. At my Office of Technology Transitions, we're looking at our own activities and working really aggressively to make sure access to our funding opportunities in national labs are more equitable. And we're doing that through research, outreach, engagement, and the review and reward process, among other areas. We also need to hear directly from diverse groups to ensure our processes are truly equitable, inclusive, and that's why we're really glad to be joining events like this. As the opening of the session mentioned, we have the Energy Program for Innovation Clusters, EPIC, prize, which provides targeted funding for energy incubators and accelerators, and really emphasizes engagement with underserved groups. And as Sumesh shared with you, the Mississippi Z-Quad project is a great example of an EPIC project that is inclusive by design. We've also developed a university engagement toolkit and took it on a webinar tour last summer. And we held a presentation with the HBCU Title III Administrators Association to showcase all the ways their organizations can partner with DOE in the labs. And you can download the toolkit at energy.gov/OTT. We also have just launched a new summer internship program where we've made sure that we had diversity in our incoming class, and that was a new internship program. They'll be teaching many undergraduates how to do technology transition, so really excited about that inaugural class that'll be coming in June. But it's clear we have a mandate to do much more, and we're looking at options for developing programs that engage MSIs and HBCUs directly. But we know it has to be a two-way conversation versus DOE waiting for you to come to us or us issuing programs that lack diverse input. And so we're developing further engagement opportunities and channels and look forward to working with you to do that. So we're going to take all the great work the Office of Diversity is doing and apply it to our own thinking. And we're focused on building a diverse team that provides the kind of intellectual base we really need to get this right. We have incredible tools and programs like the Lab Partnering Service and Technology Commercialization Fund. But if we're not quarterbacking consistent engagement with these assets, then we're not going to get to the equitable results that we need. So we've got to have the people and thinking to put our money where our mouth is and see these things enough to success. And we also need to collect and evaluate data on these metrics as well. So that's a bit of where our heads are right now. It's important we participate in conversations like the one we're having today, because that's going to feed into our thinking as we continuously revise and improve. And I'm really glad to be able to be a part of this session. And I think I've lost internet, but hopefully I'm still by phone. And when it comes back on, I'll be back on video.
We can still hear you, Vanessa, so that's
Perfect.
great. So yeah, you know, that whatever that loss was actually pretty seamless. So we never lost your audio. So that's so technology does work sometimes. So yeah, no, you know, I'm looking at the time as well too. So we have about 15 minutes left in our session. So I know some of the diehard folks are still on the call, given the fact that it's a Friday afternoon, and even later on the East Coast, I'm in the Central Time, so I'm an hour behind. But I'd love to really hear from the audience as well to see what your thoughts are and to see what questions you may have for Dr. Ford or Dr. Chan. We can either unmute themselves or they can put it in the chat box. So, and while you're doing that, Vanessa, you mentioned the Lab Partner Service. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And also, I think I'd kind of like to follow that up to see how the state energy offices can really get more plugged into that and encourage local entrepreneurship through the Lab Partnering Service.
Sure. So we have an online portal, and people who's on my team can drop it into the chat. And it basically is a portal, web portal, where you can keyword search any kind of technology, and out will pop out all the patents, invention disclosures, facilities as well as researchers that are working in that arena. And so it's a really cool tool because through that you can see, wow, there's stuff going on DOE that's relevant to the work that I'm doing. And then we actually have portals where you can reach out and we can try to connect you to researchers, or you can download the patents. And it's really a way for us to showcase the tens of thousands of assets that we have across our nation that has been driven by DOE.
Great, thank you. Chris, I was going to ask you, I think you brought up some really good points, and I think I heard some of that earlier in terms of disparities that exist between some of the jobs, right? You got 100,000 maybe at one end of the spectrum, say the white workers maybe doing that, and the other minorities maybe working half as much. I think some of that may also be just the type of jobs that are the different communities are engaged in. But it also really points out and reinforces the fact that jobs in the innovation sector, which are harder to get to first, right, because there's not that many, but when you do get into them, the payout can be much, much bigger, right? And I think you made a really good point. Would you like to maybe expound upon that, why it's so important to actually engage more minorities in the innovation space?
Yeah, it was interesting right now, especially clean tech right now. We had the 2007, 2008 financial crisis, but behind that was also a clean tech bubble in the venture capital space. Well, if you look at the last 3 years, we've broken records in clean tech venture capital investments. And so one of the challenges that we need to think about is how do we be more inclusive on campuses and with MSIs and HBCUs to be a part of clean tech startups. So the wave of some simple stats, in terms, since I did mention, the fund managers right now of most venture capital funds, less than 1% are from underrepresented groups. And so they don't have the deal flow relationships that are feeding into HBCUs. So if I look at North Carolina A&T, or I look at what's happening at Morgan, if we have better relationships with venture capital funds or alternative investment funds with those campuses, as well as SBIR, SCTR programs, you will start to see earlier or future improvements in terms of not only the jobs that get created, but the economic benefits that come out of being a part of a startup. The other piece that we haven't focused on is the minority business participation as job creators in the energy sector. That's something I've reached out to Sandy and BW Research to look at. Hopefully part of their next study they're working on, we'll work on with HBCDAC, is looking at minority businesses as a job creator in this space. I think those issues that's baked into our system that we're trying to heal from, the Justice 40 initiative will definitely have a role to play in that. Those are ways we start to build solutions on top of imperfect structural systems we have in America. But a focus that we have to invest in is some of those early capital issues, the 50K that Vanessa mentioned that's going to help out VQuad. There's a similar 50K gap that you see a lot of young entrepreneurs face that is not spoken of in the venture capital Silicon Valley ether, is that you'll see a lot of technology scouts put 50K quietly into some startups that grow into Snapchat or some of these larger companies that we read about, and only see the $50 million valuation and $1 billion investment. So those are things we need to think about structurally in those early stage investments.
Yeah, and I can really say that from personal experience too, right? So the 50K was actually the total award, and we're actually splitting that into two different segments, right? The first one is 25,000, the second one is 25,000. And out of the first 25,000, we actually have now a cohort of 10 companies. And it's really interesting because one of the companies said, if I'm not getting the money, I don't really want to be a part of it. But I actually sat down with him one-on-one and said, look, just because you're not getting the money, we're still providing you the mentorship. We have enough volunteers who wanted to come into play. Jackson State University is actually helping us through their I-Corps program that they have. Several universities actually have the I-Corps program. So they are making the Launchpad, which is through the Glider platform, available to all the teams. So now every team, whether they won the $5,000 award or not, will still actually be able to put their information into the Launchpad and actually come up with a business model canvas. So we're just starting our accelerator. And our goal is to hopefully at the end of the 10-week period, the accelerator, they have a really well laid out business canvas, right? Because it's so important to be able to take that around and shop it to other places. And again, credit to really what got us thinking was the fact that Epic was even out there, which then we were able to mobilize our resources and pull the team together. But beyond EPIC, there are a lot of programs that OTT has. Vanessa, would you like to maybe talk a little bit about some of the internships and you just mentioned the new internship program, but I know historically there's been quite a few internships that are out there, and there's a lot of work that's being done with the Advanced Manufacturing Office also that really kind of lends itself has a workforce component to that. And I don't know if that's beyond where you've already gotten into in the few couple months you've been there or not, but floor is yours.
Well, I think, my fellow colleagues, including myself, are very much excited about this next generation and truly do believe mentorship and representation is so critical. I heard on a previous session, someone who was like, they felt inspired because they saw someone ahead of them that looked like them. And that is so, so, so critical. And so for us, it's about how do we bring more people into the DOE so they can see the kinds of things that we're doing and also see the diversity of the leadership. I don't know if you know this, but over half of the appointees are women in the DOE, which is like amazing, right? And so it's really incredible, the thoughtfulness around this. And so there has been a very big push to drive towards internships. And I personally wanted one that was on technology transitions because as a professor and actually even as a practitioner, no one ever taught me technology transitions. I mean, there's no degree you can get in technology transitions. In fact, you can't even put together courses that would allow you to even get the experience you need on technology transitions. And so for me, the only way that we can really have engineers and scientists have an impact in the world is by having them learn technology transitions by working with projects and doing very similar things to what we do with I-Corps. And within OTT, we run I-Corps for the department, and the impact that you see in the transformation of the engineers is amazing. So really what we're doing with this summer internship program, and I have to give kudos to my team for pulling this together, because originally like, this is great for 2022. I was like, no, I really want to do it now. And we moved at a pace that was astronomically fast. But we have about 15 interns coming in who are going to be paired up with projects from the labs. And they're going to be using those projects as a vehicle to learn about how to cold call, how to talk to the market, understand the value proposition, all the kinds of elements and capabilities that we build through the I-Corps program. And so I made sure that when we did this, we were getting a very, very diverse base. And so we have several students coming from MSI and HBCU organizations. And I'm really, really excited about inspiring this next generation to do great work. And I think internships at the DOE and other organizations like this really are an incredible stepping stone to their career path.
So how would students have found out about this program that you're talking about on the Technology Transitions Internship?
Well, we did it pretty fast. And so the good news was there was a vehicle from which we could move through this. And so ORISE has been established for many, many years. And so we use that as a platform. But I also put on LinkedIn. And so actually a ton of applications through that. So LinkedIn is a wonderful tool where I post all kinds of opportunities there. And so we saw a flood of applications coming in. And, it's something where I personally believe that in the end, a lot of this stuff is word of mouth. So the thing I'm excited about is our interns are all coming from different organizations. So when they go back in the fall, like, oh my gosh, this is the most awesome internship program. And then word of mouth will then radiate it. So I'm expecting those kinds of situations for the next round.
I think that I'm just going to say, I think that really points to the importance of the networks, right? To be able to plug into, and no pun intended, since we're all energy folks here, but to really be able to understand who's who out there and to be able to leverage it. And I'm sorry, Chris, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. No, your job moderating. I wanted to add to Vanessa's point about the importance of internship programs. There's some, I know Vanessa is 102 days old at Department of Energy. And this was brought up in yesterday's session. When I was at the Department of Energy, we actually augmented the minority internships program to actually be a technology transition internship. We did a pilot of that, and not to help move money around, but there's a funding mechanism in place where you can actually expand your internship program, not only through ORISE, but actually through the MECEP program, as was highlighted. And we did that very similarly. It was a late ask, but what we did, we had 15 students, all from MSIs and tribal college universities, look at 10 DOE technologies. And they went through the whole Lean Launchpad curriculum, and some in 7 weeks and others in 10. But there's funding mechanisms that with the will of this collective that can expand your ORISE program that you did with ORISE. So.
That's always good to do. And I love it when people are scrappy with funding. I think all of us resonate with that because you can augment it. And I think the other thing, Chris let you know too, is, because it's new, right? You don't want to do too many because you want to make sure that you do it thoughtfully. But I can see us scaling this because also Energy I-Corps alum can be mentors. And so, as someone who's a professor on leave, I truly believe that people get a lot by teaching others. And so if there's ways that we can activate our I-Corps alum to become teachers themselves, it just really creates opportunities for them to learn and grow as well. So I'm looking for ways to amplify things, and I'll be excited for that to be happening.
No, that's great. And I'm glad that you mentioned the ORISE program. We actually have an ORISE fellow in Mississippi that I helped put together, and she's now in the Public Service Commission working on the solar program. So, and it's really interesting too, that what you learn from the fellows who are in those programs, because they can actually become a source for you to really know what's going on in the other states. And she can say, well, those states are doing these kinds of policies. How come we don't do that? And they're younger, they're idealistic in some ways too, right? And it's like, yes, I hear you. And we're trying to figure that out ourselves too. So, but it's really so neat to be able to see those perspectives from the students and their way of thinking that, and sometimes we're still continuing thinking and they're like, we want it done right now. Let's get it done. So it really is a breath of fresh air to have those students in too. Still want to make sure that we leave some time for audience participation. I think we have about 41 participants on there. So Sandy, any questions that have come through the chat or any things that any other state energy offices may have voiced to you that you want to bring up?
Sure, thanks, Sumesh. So I will note that NASIO has done some work investigating how state energy offices participate in the clean tech innovation ecosystem. And I think there are the big examples like California and New York, and there's certainly an inclusive innovation lens there. But I think even for the smaller budgets and the smaller interventions, there's always an opportunity to connect with the minority serving institutions in their state. So for the state energy offices that are considering STEM, clean tech, innovation, I would certainly encourage that sort of approach and recognizing that there's a really important talent pipeline coming from underrepresented communities. We do have Kelly Smith-Burke with the Florida Office of Energy on the line. Her office has been doing quite a bit of work in the Florida Energy Systems Consortium. So Kelly, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that, I think it would be valuable as a state example.
Sure, I'm happy to, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Dr. Ford and Dr. Chan, for being with us. Dr. Ford, being that you are in my state, very interested in all the stuff that you're talking about. So I'll definitely be reaching out to you to see how we can collaborate more from the state energy office to support some of the work that you are doing. But as Sandy said, we do in the state of Florida have our Florida Energy Systems Consortium, which is a consortium of our public universities. And it helps to coordinate our research within those universities as it relates to energy to make sure that we are combining resources and applying together instead of competing with each other in certain areas. But one of the things that the Florida Energy Systems Consortium does as well is they have an industry advisory board. So a lot of the energy industries within the state of Florida, whether that's utilities or ESCOs or other companies along that line, sit on that board. And that helps to guide the research that our universities are doing so that we can make sure that our research is being applied to the industries within our state that is needed. It also allows for a mechanism to where those grad students who are working on this research within the university can find jobs within that particular industry, because let's use as an example, a utility is looking at the research that's being done at one of our universities. Once that graduate student graduates, sometimes they will hire that student and put them into that project that they had been working on. So it really helps create that whole life cycle, if you will, from inception, from an R&D project to completion, and then moving that into industry. So I think that it's been very helpful to us, and we've been able to, with that Florida Energy Systems Consortium, leverage a lot of funding from both the state and the federal government, as well as private industry, to help move our R&D forward. And if anyone would like any more information on it, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss it further. But just wanted to share that with you all. So thank you, Sandy, for that opportunity.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kelly. Well, Dr. Chan, Dr. Ford, Dr. Aurora, this has been a really great panel. I did want to create one last opening. If there are any final questions or comments from the group, feel free to chime in. All right.
Great. Well, I just personally want to thank all, both Chris and Vanessa really for spending this afternoon with us. And Sandy, thank you for the opportunity to be able to moderate this session and also share a little bit what we're doing in Mississippi. So with that, I know we're actually just a minute past the time that we were allotted. So I'll hand it back to you.
Well, thank you, Sumesh. This has been truly inspirational. We've had a great series of discussions, and we're so grateful for everybody sticking around on a Friday afternoon. I've been taking so many notes, and also just want to thank our partner, the HBCU Community Development Action Coalition. Natasha, thank you for bringing your members and your team to this. Natasha, if you have any final thoughts or themes that you wanted to pick up on, please do share, and I'll also plan to share a few of my closing thoughts as well.
No, thank you, Sandy, and thank you to everyone, Dr. Chan, Sumesh, Chris, for this discussion, the last one of the day between us and the weekend. But I think over the last few days, the conversation's been great. I mean, I think looking at all the work that NASCIO does in the space and CDAC, really working with HBCUs, given the topic, it's critical that the voice of the HBCUs are included in this conversation, be that internships, be that job creation, be that just diversity and inclusion on a very broad but very granular level. And I think, as Dr. Baker said yesterday, it's not just about energy, it's about equity, it's about the environment, and it's really about climate, and how do we think about these issues in a way that is truly inclusive and truly reaches back to communities that, one, are in need and are probably most impacted. So looking forward to debriefing with you, Sandy, and determining what are the next steps based on what we heard today. So thank you again to everyone, and looking forward to the next round of conversations and action.
Thanks, Natasha. And just to reemphasize what you said, I think one of the key takeaways for me from the past 2 days has been around intentionality in program design, policy design, and engagement. And it's not just a matter of if you build it, they will come. It's a matter of really thinking about how best to engage people who have not been part of these discussions in the past because of bias, because of racism, because of the history of our country. And so thank you all for helping illuminate those pieces for me and for others. I will open the floor for any final thoughts, comments, questions. I will also note, as a follow-up, NASCIO and CDAC will be developing some joint recommendations for how state energy offices and academic institutions can foster a more inclusive and diverse workforce and STEM innovation pipeline. So please be on the lookout for that. There are a few of you who we might be bugging for more ideas, insights based on some of the conversations over the past 2 days. But for now, I'll stop talking and see if anybody else has any final closing thoughts. Karen, feel free to share what you just chatted to me. I think that's great.
No, actually, you got to it before me, and my comment was let's all be intentional about the movement to have more minority serving institutions and HBCUs involved, included, and not just in workforce, but as well as in entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur, so it is very important that we become, we become more involved and a part of the funding that's out there for everyone. And we have to take advantage of it. We have to jump in and take advantage of it as well.
Thanks, Karen. Well, that's a great note to end on. Please do check the chat. There's a sign up form if you're interested in more discussions on this topic. We're very happy to be a forum and provide the space and place for everybody to do so. With that, unless there's any final comments from you, Natasha, or your team, maybe we'll say goodbye and thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.